human beings are naturally drawn to grow and expand, right? So when we're not doing that proactively or unconsciously, we're not happy. So although change is hard, like you said, I mean, you have to get outside your comfort zone. Credit to you for noticing that that's how you grow and expand.
This is the Rebel HR Podcast, the podcast where we talk to HR innovators about all things people leadership. If you're looking for places to find about new ways to think about the world of work, this is the podcast for you. Please subscribe from your favorite podcast listening platform today and leave us a review. Rebel on, HR Rebels. Welcome back, Rebel HR listeners, to a special Friday episode release. Really excited to introduce you all to Jan Barlow, who is a kindred HR spirit. She is a thought disruptor, a catalyst, and facilitator of change. She founded the 501c3 Better Job Fit, and we are so excited to have her with us today. Welcome, Jan.
Thank you. It's great to be here, fellow disruptor.
Disruptors unite. Also would like to welcome Molly, who has been traveling all over the country and is joining us today. Welcome, Molly.
Thank you, Kyle.
So before we get into the conversation, because there's so many great things we're going to talk about, I'd like, Jan, to give you an opportunity to help our listeners understand a little bit about your background.
Thank you, Kyle. You know, I started my career in working for a global pharmaceutical company and literally creating my own job there. Height of my career, was hired by our biggest competitor and set up for success. 2 months later, got a new manager, went south real quick. How can you be hired for your strengths and then all of a sudden 2 months later it be totally different? So it was such a tremendous bad experience that I lost my hair. I mean, my hair fell out, my palms started to peel. I was sleeping for 12 hours. It affected me physically, the stress of it. And that's when I just said, you know, life's too short. And afterwards, I just said I wanted to, for a life's work, or really what I was called to do, was to start Better Job Fit, because my goal was to put people in positions of strength. Since companies weren't doing it, managers weren't doing it, it's going to be up to individuals to have that self-mastery, to make sure that they do everything they can do to not put themselves in harm's way, right? And so that's really how I started Better Job Fit, and that was back in 2009, and we've grown the brand to 3 other brands for Better Job Fit, and here we are today.
I love it. So for those that aren't familiar, what is Better Job Fit? What is the kind of the mission of your organization?
So the mission really is, with all of our brands, is to reimagine work. So when we looked at each of our individual brands, it has to all do about individuals and that work-life integration and weaving, whether it's, you know, creating your own career. That's our creating your next. It's not about finding a job. It's about creating your next, right? New, exciting, extraordinary transition. Behavior diversity. That's our equity and inclusion brand. We all talk about the external elements of diversity. What's different physically, you know, race, religion, sex, but really how we perceive others is based on our behaviors. And then we really took all 3 of those brands, and we needed a platform and a space to bring people together to talk about a lot of different things. And that's where the HR Disruptor Summit came in. So it's really all of our brands is about reimagine work.
I love that. And I think, you know, it's the other thing I'll say is this isn't like something that you're like last year, you know, there's this trend that we should, you know, that, oh, wow, you mean people actually want to have purpose at work, and, you know, like they want to have work and life integration. And, you know, it's like you've been doing this for a long time, and you know, you spotted this need many years ago. As you look at the kind of the world of work, and specifically in the context of human resources, has much changed over the last few years, or are we still kind of in the same rut that we've been in when you started your organization?
It's still the same way, and fast forward from 2008 or 9 really 2009 when we officially launched Better Job Fit. Harvard Business Review in 2015, the July-August issue, the front cover said it's time to blow up HR and create something new. I mean, that
2015.
That's
all right.
2015.
I guess I'm not cutting edge.
Right. I mean, and 2016 was interesting because that's when Consumer Reports put out a cover that said, my college degree bankrupted me. So that's why in 2020, when I said, okay, when we look at topics, I'm like, number one topic, or at least one of the top 2 or 3 is bridging the gap between academia and the workforce. Right. And, so this hasn't been new news, but what I think it comes down to, we live in a quantum science world where everything, I mean, when you think about it, we have everything we want quickly, overnight, at our disposal, whatever we want. But when it comes to 3-dimension of time and process, there's a disconnect between the quantum science world that we live in and the world of HR and work, right? That's a totally like a different time warp,
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting that the conversation is essentially the same, and that people are looking for more, and people are questioning why we do things the way that we do. So as you look at HR as a profession, and as you look at some of the work that you've done over the years, what are some call outs where you see maybe these are the areas that we really need to change if we are going to level up and evolve with the evolving world?
I think from an industry standpoint, not only just, I think from the HR industry, we have to start looking at bringing different ideas together. But the problem is when you just stay within your own silo industry, you don't get any outside information, right? Or feedback. So you keep on regurgitating the same stale water that, you're not doing anything different, right? You're not getting a 360 view of your industry or really what the needs are. And I think that's in every industry. That's why when we created the summit, it's about a 360. We're bringing people from all industries and all positions around the same topics that we're dealing with, bridging the gap between academia and the workforce, right? I mean, HR needs to get outside and every industry needs to look outside their own bubble, right?
Yeah, one of the best things I've ever done in my career is reaching out, touring, educating myself, just learning from other people, other industries, other companies. I've learned so much from that. What other ways can we do that? Or have you seen HR professionals get outside?
That's what I'm saying. They're not doing it. And that's why when all these years, all my HR peeps, because I've been part of the second largest SHRM organization in the U.S. is here in Dallas, and kept on seeing recycling. You're getting the same people, really the same viewpoint from within the industry. You're not really getting viewpoints from outside the industry. So that's really why we have the summit, is to bring these different industries together in outside positions to start having these open conversations about solving some, issues and challenges, doing something different. And to your point, Molly, you proactively went out to seek out different people and from different viewpoints. HR doesn't do that. And a lot of industries don't.
We'll be back after a quick break.
And so used to having everything in front of them right away that we forget that innovation just takes time. I myself, I get frustrated too. Why? And this as being one of my best friends is, hey, I talk to you all the time. Hey, man, I'm frustrated in the fact that I can't seem to just get there in the next day. But that's just not how these things work, right? Innovation needs to be planned out. It needs to be very methodical. And then when it finally hits, that's when it seems like to everyone else that it sort of just came out of nowhere. But to you, you know the amount of dedication that it took over that time.
Well, before you give me too much credit, usually when I do that, it's because I find myself getting stagnant in what I'm doing, how I'm thinking. And it's just something that I have to recognize. I'm like, oh gosh, I have to get out of this cycle. Otherwise, to Kyle's point, HR is never going to level up. I am never going to level up my organization. And I hope there's more like me that recognize when they get stagnant and want to do something about it.
Well, it is to your credit, my friend, because I know who we attract to any of our Better Job Fit brands. We focus on the consciously advanced individual, meaning they're going beyond their comfort zone and they want to grow. And that's where I truly believe human beings are naturally drawn to grow and expand, right? So when we're not doing that proactively or unconsciously, we're not happy. So although change is hard, like you said, I mean, you have to get outside your comfort zone. Credit to you for noticing that that's how you grow and expand.
You're too sweet. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, it's the
Molly's
truth.
too humble to take any credit,
Yeah,
but she
I
does
mean,
deserve a lot of credit.
Kudos to you.
I think it's a really important point, and I think it's a really appropriate challenge and call to action for people in our profession. And unfortunately, I've observed it as well. There was a point earlier in my career many years ago where I was questioning whether this was the right field for me, because I did feel like we were supposed to just stay in our box, make sure you check the box on compliance, do this audit here, do this thing there, make sure that you take all humanity out of the workplace and follow that process as a black and white operator within a big complex, right? And I hated that. I felt like this is a disservice to the organization, and it's also, for me, it's like the most boring thing I could do. I have no interest in being like a robotic HR person in this massive machine. So for those of us that have that mindset, or are maybe even questioning, am I in the right organization? Am I in the right job? Am I even in the right industry? What recommendations would you have for us to grow and really, kind of push ourselves to be better?
So I guess I want to clarify the question. To stay in the HR industry, how to grow yourself within that industry and what its limitations are right now?
Exactly. Yeah.
What I have seen work is I get a lot of feedback from official HR professionals, right? Such as you, that say that when they go to conferences, they get more out of the individual meeting others individually and going out for coffee or having those side chats, right? So that's the first and foremost, is to meet with other like-mindedness, individuals in your industry, but more so bring that third party that's outside of your industry. That's really what I would suggest, because it's not until you get outside your industry that you're really going to grow. Right? And get outside your silo.
Yeah, I've found value even not even getting outside my industry, but if somebody is not ready to do that or a little bit scared, you can even start within your own business. So for example, go learn your marketing department, go pick their brain, go pick the other departments, even right within your organization, your four walls. That's a great starting point as well.
No, and you know what? It's interesting you brought that up, Molly, about the marketing, because right now we're doing a project with the public relations Association, PRSA, Public Relations Society of America. And we're going to organize an event bringing together communications professionals and HR professionals, because when you think about, again, just like marketing, behavior industry profiles are totally opposite. But what we see is when communications and HR, I mean, they're one and the same. I mean, they have to be in alignment, and they're not right now. And so we want to facilitate an event and an experience to pull these two industries together and start creating more relationships around that. And I think that having that exposure to other, thoughts from both ends of the spectrum, I think we're going to be able to facilitate some good relationships there, right? That will impact the industry overall. So we're trying to facilitate those relationships, or create those relationships, to now start affecting HR in an organic way.
Oh, yeah. Maybe if we start working with communication, we can get our employees to read our emails and our newsletters.
That's right. That's exactly right. Right.
Per
I love
my
that.
last email.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been there.
Yeah.
I think it's so powerful. It's such a great call out, Jan. And the other thing is, it's like, it's not overly complex, right? It's like, you could put together all these like fancy like flow charts and tools and all these things that HR should be doing. But, at the end of the day, it's about connection with people that have a different perspective, that have a different skill set. I mean, isn't that really what HR is supposed to be doing anyways? Like building a team like that? Like, am I missing something?
No,
I feel like
I'm sorry.
I feel like I'm missing something.
No, that's what I'm saying, that we get so basic about it. We're going, okay, is this really rocket science, people? I mean, it's not called human resources. I remember a time when it was branded as human relations. That's what it used to be called. When I first started to work in the 80s, like in Washington, D.C., I remember the sign outside the door said human relations. Where did we get into this now, flipping human capital, human resources? I mean, those words are so not, like, lose that language, right? I mean, let's start using some high vibrational words instead of, calling people resources and human capital. I mean, we're not selling widgets here, people.
Absolutely. We talked about this, Jan, in a recent conversation, and I think it's a really powerful comment, and it's something I don't want to skip over, because even the name implies that we are here to consume something, right? A resource is something that is consumed in some way, shape, or form. Like, what a weird way to think about people, first of all, and second of all, it doesn't even really describe what we do. So
no, it doesn't. I mean, we're talking about rebranding an entire industry. That's what's necessary. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but when you think of an industry as a brand, why it's no different than a product or a service. This industry really needs a facelift from the top down, because human being, like employees, that I don't know about what your experience has been, because you're on the other side of HR. But as far as people don't want to go to HR, they don't feel safe to go into HR because they're concerned something is going to be used against them. Right? I mean, that's why this whole industry needs a facelift. Like, we need to rebrand human relations. I mean, it really would be a great little project.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think it's something we can all do within our own four walls and within our own organizations, by being intentional, by getting out of our office and building those connections and relationships, working with leaders, working with frontline associates, and just being visible, really.
You make a great point, Mara, because a lot of HR people, that's foreign to them. Like, why would I go and take a manager out of every department and go to lunch with them every month? Like, why would I do that? Like, are you kidding me? Why wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're not, and to your point, we need to get out in our own companies and start creating relationships with our different departments to find out what their needs are. People only come to, those departments only come to you when they have a problem or when they need somebody, like when they need to hire somebody. You got to create relationship and be proactive first before people then can trust you to bring their problems or to share maybe, their feedback and be a little bit more open. But you have to create relationship, and that takes being proactive.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's so funny, and I'm just sitting here, I'm like, I'm getting wound up a little bit, because it's like, we're talking about like, well, the job title's right, and then in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, gee, if only HR had some control over job titling, that would really be something, right? It's like we do have some control here, we have some agency in all of these things, and then I do think to go back to the point you just made, Jan, I think it's critical. And there's this whole, everybody you talk to, it seems like in human resources complains about having a seat at the table or having the, kind of the political capital within their organization. At the end of the day, I think we overcomplicate it. What it is if people see value in you and your perspective in the work that you do and the value that you provide to the organization, they're going to ask you to be there. It's as simple as that. And the way that you do that is by understanding the challenges, the barriers to success, what your team needs, and how their business operates. Like you have to be a generalist beyond human resources. You have to be a business professional or an organizational professional within your organization, not just human resources.
And in my mind, that doesn't even mean you have to have all the answers or all the solutions. But in HR, I love HR because you're like in the middle of all these different departments and you can serve as that connector. So if one department is having a challenge, you say, oh, I know another department that can work really well with you. And it's just connecting those and being that center.
But to your point, Molly, you're the one that's initiating that.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's where, when we talk about agency, Kyle, you got to own your position in HR. Okay. So you can't whine about not having a seat at the table, to your point, if you're not bringing value. And to bring value, you have to go outside of your department to talk to other people so they see your value, right? Just because you're in HR doesn't, like, you got to get people to know you, to know your value, to see it, right? To hear your opinion. But you have to first care enough to want to get out and learn more about others and to see how you can serve others in HR, in your capacity, right? There's a victim mindset, it's, oh, we want a seat at the table. Okay, well, what are you doing? What power are you using, your own power, to get that? If you're just sitting there waiting for somebody to acknowledge you, guess what? That dog's not going to hunt. I'm sorry, but that's you got to get outside yourself instead of just playing a victim about it.
Amen.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Preach.
I love this conversation, but I do want to go back, and I hate to go backwards because we are having an awesome conversation, but you said this twice now, talked about bridging the gap between academics and the workforce. And I think that's so important. I mean, I think of how many times I've heard HR people talk about, oh, people are missing soft skills, or, I've been at a job fair and I meet this business management degree and I'm like, well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to be a manager. Okay. What industry? Why do you want to do that? And they just have no idea. Right. So what advice do you have for HR individuals? Like, how can we make an impact on that? Eliminating that barrier.
It's about creating partnerships. I know that we worked with UT Dallas and University of Phoenix back in 2018 on a project. We surveyed alumni. 65% of alumni said that they were not in a job that related to their degree. I mean, and that's not new news. That's not like it's been in the last 10 years. I mean, this has been going on, but But when it comes down to it, so we got both academia, we got a VP of Toyota and State Farm with chancellors and presidents of universities to come together. And because they weren't believing us, academia and, in the separate bubbles, they weren't thinking these stats were credible. We got them all in one room, and academia really was shocked because the major employers said it takes us a year after we hire somebody to get them up and running to where they're actually working for us, right? They're actually producing. And so they said the top 3 things that they expect from a graduate: experience, executive presence, and leadership skills. Well, they don't teach that in academia. And so when one of the chancellors said, well, what about a degree? The response was, mic drop, anybody can get a degree. So that's why when we talk about the summit, we're bringing entities like career technical educators from high schools. We're bringing career development directors from colleges. We're bringing HR professionals from companies, right? Bringing them together to say, okay, let's get it all in one room. Let's talk about what type of partnership or relationship can we put together that has a program that can bridge this gap. Nobody does that. You got career development people going to Subway, Jimmy John's and all these places, and they come back and they think that's career development. Working with Jimmy John's or Subway to, hire people and bringing that and posting it on a job board for their alumni. What is that? Like that, I mean, see, that's what I'm saying. But when you have to do it from behind the scenes, unfortunately, because that means doing something different, right? It's creating relationship, but in a different way.
Absolutely. So here in Iowa, we actually have some colleges that have advisory boards where you're talking just like that. So people from the profession can come in and essentially advise on what they're seeing or what they're seeing that's missing in these schools graduates. That's another really good opportunity, I think, that HR professionals can get involved in to make a difference.
So what's interesting, though, is the schools aren't changing their curriculum. So it really, unless you have change in each of those bubbles, it doesn't matter what the HR goes to a company. I mean, goes to has an advisory board for the students, because it's the schools and their curriculum. That's the 2 biggest entities. The schools and the companies are not getting together, and the schools are not changing their format for curriculum.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's the basic foundation. So you can have advisory boards until the cows come home, but until schools start producing different curriculum to prepare the students, companies are not going to get what they need.
Yeah, so these advisory boards are just what you were talking about. They are the school and essentially business professionals connecting to improve the curriculum. And I'm not sure if every school has it, but if not, what a great opportunity to try to create change within that school, within that curriculum. But somebody's got to take the initiative, right? We can't all just sit back and blame other people for the problem.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, it's another thing, academia doesn't bring in enough business people. They just want somebody with a PhD or whatever. And it's who's never been in business. So again, you're teaching theory that you have no experience to share. They're keeping that in a bubble. So unless you're bringing people who have been successful or who have been in that experience of that business or industry, you're really not providing the level of experience or expertise or knowledge or wisdom to these students. And that's a huge thing. So there are foundational issues or challenges that really, need to change that I don't know if academia is ready for,
I think some are. But I think going back to your point, Jan, it's like people like us that want to make change and disrupt and have, observed where the change needs to be made. And then it's finding those similar minded people within academia that have the will to do some of these things. And to give a little bit of a, backup to, because I got a lot of friends in academia, I do think that there are some really, well-intentioned programs out there. I do think that people are starting to demand this. Certainly some of the groundswell of people questioning the value of a college degree versus, maybe a more specialized degree. I think change is coming, but we need to step up and help articulate that change, in my opinion. We are the ones on the front lines hiring these individuals, and if they don't have the skills that we need, then we need to advocate to change, how we're developing it. But I do go back to
both of us working together.
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. We got to have the conversation and be willing to have the conversation. And I think going back to kind of where we started this conversation, that nothing is simple. This is not a binary world, and you can't treat career development or education or training or experience as a binary thing. It's like this big mess of spaghetti on a plate. That's what everybody's career looks like. Nobody has this career ladder. It's a myth, right?
See, that's exactly to your point, Kyle. There's an unexpected. I mean, it's not realistic. Like people just. So why do we keep on preparing and following this path and expectation? Oh, okay. So now when you go into college, you got to pick your for the rest of your life. Why are we even doing it in this pattern that doesn't even is not reality? That's another foundational. I mean, we got schools, high schools and junior high. They are asking and expecting students in junior high, when the front part of your brain has not been fully developed, to ask and claim what you want to be when you grow up.
I either wanted to be a paleontologist, a cop, or a rock star, and none of those things happened, unfortunately. Sorry.
Well, you're still a rock star, my friend. You're still a rock star.
Well, I have a microphone in front of me, but that's
yeah, and you're kind of fulfilling that dream with your cover photo on this podcast.
Hey,
it manifests in different ways. Okay, we can tie what you manifested. I can tell you that.
I put it out there in the universe. There you go.
You could play at the beginning of each show, Kyle.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
There you go.
No, thank you. I will leave that to the professionals. Someday, Molly, after enough beers, maybe.
Okay.
But no, I think it's been an absolutely wonderful conversation. I know, Jan, that you are going to continue this conversation with your with your upcoming conference. So I'm just going to give you a warm pitch to tell us more about this conference and give us some details.
Thank you, Kyle. It's going to be held here in Dallas, October 5th through 7th, and it's 2.5 days. We have Haley Taylor Schlitz, the youngest Black American to graduate from law school. So she is our academic disruptor. She graduated from SMU Law School at age 19, just this last May. So we are just excited to have her as our guest this year. We are bringing academia. We are bringing, HR professionals. We're bringing real estate, relocation companies, equity and inclusion. So we're really pulling from vast majority C-suite, vast majority of different industries to come together under one roof and really start talking about and create relationships around these topics and start really addressing with our solution sessions. We're going to have labs and we're going to have beta projects afterwards. So it's taking those theories that we talk about in the lab and then implementing them, and going to be finishing up in February with some white papers that are going to be published from the beta project. So it's a process. We have virtual, we have in-person, and then we'll have our beta project. So really excited to be able to bring people together and facilitate change.
Absolutely. And where can they go to find out more about the conference and purchase tickets?
You can go to HR Disruptors Summit, and that's HRDISRUPTERS Summit, SUMMIT.com.
Awesome. And we'll have that link in the show notes as well, so you can open up your podcast player, click in, check it out, and really appreciate it. With that being said, I can't wait to hear the responses to the Rebel HR Flash Round. So we're gonna shift gears and go through the Flash Round. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right. Question number 1: where does HR need to rebel?
Think differently, because that's so against their industry.
Absolutely. Human relations, right? Human relations.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Human relations. Let's get back to that.
I love it. Question number 2: who should we be listening to?
I gotta tell you, Einstein, any of our, great scientists, look at their life and look at their lessons, especially Einstein. Pablo Picasso said, anything that can be imagined is real. And I know this is not woo-woo. We're just really trying to, take this knowledge and wisdom that's been here forever from our, those great leaders. Think differently. And that's exactly what they've done and what they did.
Absolutely. Expand your horizons. All right. Last question. How can our listeners connect with you?
Can connect with me on LinkedIn, or I think it's under Jan Barlow. You can also email me, jbarlow@betterjobfit.org, and contact me directly. Would love to speak to anybody.
Absolutely. And we'll have that in the show notes. Jan, I just want to thank you again. It's been wonderful to connect with you and get to know you here over the last few weeks, and just really appreciate you spending some time with us here today.
My friends, I tell you what, I just really so value our connection, both you and Molly. It's just so great to be called to come together and for a higher purpose. And really, thank you for your time and this opportunity.
I feel the same way, Jan. Thanks.
Me too.
All right, that does it for the Rebel HR podcast. Big thank you to our guests. Follow us on Facebook at Rebel HR Podcast, Twitter at Rebel HR Guy, or see our website at rebelhumanresources.com. The views and opinions expressed by Rebel HR Podcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any of the organizations that we represent. No animals were harmed during the filming of this podcast.
Baby.